everybody. It is Friday, September 13th. Friday the 13th here. You're listening to the Mo.news podcast. I'm mo.news.
And I'm Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts.
And we read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to. Jill, does Friday the 13th freak you out or not a big deal to you?
Moshe, I am not a fan of Friday the 13th. I have to admit, I've had some just, you could call it coincidences. I've had some just weird things happen to me. And I've realized after the fact that it's Friday the 13th. So I don't know. I'm hoping to just get through the day. What about you?
I never think it's a big thing. I know the thing that freaks, there's all these things that freak people out. Like one time I walked under a ladder in front of Alex and she's like, no, you can't do that. You need to walk back under that ladder. We got to throw some salt over our shoulder, whatever. The 13th never been like a big issue for me, but I know it is for some people. And by the way, you go way back, you go to Nordic culture, Nordic mythology. 13 is a bad omen. Back to Jesus in the Bible. 13 people were present at the Last Supper. Judas, the betrayer of Jesus, was the last to arrive. So 13 has a bad association there. And Friday, if you go back to the Bible, that's when Jesus was crucified. Cain killed Abel. Eve offered Adam the apple. So there's just some bad Friday association if you go there biblically. I should note Friday comes into a factor here too. If you go back to the Bible, that was the day Jesus was crucified. Cain killed Abel. Eve offered Adam the apple. So there's a lot of association there that goes back and forth. Some years you see more Friday the 13th. This year we haven't had one in a while. But nonetheless, I wish everyone a easy Friday the 13th, especially if it freaks you out.
Thank you, Moshe.
No problem.
I'll text you Saturday to let you know that everything's all's well. Okay, now to the headlines. Bomb threats reported at the City Hall in Springfield, Ohio, the same place where Donald Trump said that migrants are eating people's pets. So what is really going on in the city? We'll separate fact from fiction. Meanwhile, the debate rematch looking like it is not happening. Donald Trump says there will not be another debate. A North Dakota judge strikes down the state's abortion ban. A milestone in space, the first ever commercial spacewalk. The head of the nation's largest police force resigns amid multiple federal investigations. What is going on right now in New York City? And Jon Bon Jovi, the singer, helping to talk a woman off of a Nashville pedestrian bridge ledge. And Google it, why that might be for us old folks. Gen Z apparently ditching Google.
Showing your age if you use the term Google, apparently. You got a TikTok stuff these days.
Plus, it is Friday. Cheers to the freaking weekend, what we are watching, reading, and eating.
Jill, for the purposes of this podcast, given some of the subject matter we're covering today, we're going to be eating things in the more traditional realm.
If you catch our drift. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Based on the sneak peek I took at our section, I was like, okay, this is typical fare. Nothing controversial here. But Jill, that takes us to our first story.
Okay, let's start with a political story that we are still talking about from Tuesday's debate. Donald Trump's statement that migrants are eating pets in a town in Ohio. The exchange has gone viral. It has become a meme. People are actually making dances to on TikTok. But it is also leading to some real consequences and death threats even. The city of Springfield in Ohio actually had to evacuate and close its city hall on Thursday because of a bomb threat. Again, just days after it became the subject of claims about migrants stealing residents' pets. Officials not giving details about the content of the specific threat, but it came just days after claims that Haitian immigrants are abducting and eating pets started to circulate online. And it was a claim then spread by former President Trump during the debate on Tuesday night against Kamala Harris. Here is part of his response to a question about illegal immigration and why he told Republicans to vote down a bipartisan bill that would have beefed up the border.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating they're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
So this was followed by one of the instances where ABC News moderator David Muir fact-checked Trump. He said ABC had reached out to the city manager in Springfield, who told them that, quote, there have been no credible reports of such incidents. To which Trump said that he had seen people on TV talking about how their pets were eaten. Now, this started a week earlier when Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, posted on X that he had been hearing from people in the area that Haitian immigrants are eating people's pets. There was also a city meeting with residents saying that migrants were killing geese, as well as a call to the police about it. But city officials say that they have not found any evidence backing up those claims. After the debate, Vance told reporters he believes that the city manager, quote, is not in touch with what's going on in the area. We should note there is a viral police video going around of a woman accused of eating a cat. It is labeled online that it is from Springfield, but it is actually from Canton, Ohio, which is 170 miles away. And it features an American woman who was born in Ohio. But Moshe, as you mentioned on the Instagram feed, this misinformation is actually distracting from a real and legitimate issue in Springfield and other communities that are dealing with an influx of migrants and simply don't have enough resources to handle it.
Yeah, bottom line here is we're talking about cats and dogs and the pet issue. And now after Trump said what he said, I think, I have thousands of people in my Instagram feed. Everyone's looking for evidence that this actually happened. Then you have everyone on the other side looking for evidence that it didn't happen. Again, there was a city council meeting. There are accusations. The city officials have not seen evidence of that. Witnesses say they have seen that. We shall see. But the bigger issue here is that you have a small town, Springfield, about 60,000 residents, and nearly 20,000 additional migrants from Haiti have arrived in the area since the pandemic. So many people are writing in from Ohio saying, can we talk about the bigger issue here, which is we have a public health issue. Many of these people are not vaccinated. They're concerned about outbreaks of tuberculosis and other diseases. There's a lack of resources. The feds have given a couple $1 million, but the governor of Ohio is saying this is not enough to provide food and shelter and education for these people. They're in desperate need here of more assistance. Again, a town of 60,000 dealing with an influx of 20,000. So nearly a 33% increase there in just a matter of years. So there's a number of residents there that don't feel safe, that they don't know how to deal with the influx here. And ultimately, that's the larger issue you see unfolding in Springfield, despite all the attention being on this pet duck eating issue. Now, as far as what led so many Haitian migrants to this town in Ohio, apparently there is a low cost of living. There were some work opportunities. And typically with migrants or immigration, you hear, through family or friends that, all these people have shown up in this town. Let me go follow them there. So I can be with, my friends from back at home. But the issue you then run into is that this rapid rise in population strains resources, housing, healthcare, schools, etc. We've heard from you, some teachers, that across the country, as we've seen this influx of migrants in their classrooms, they have a couple of kids that just, enter third grade and have never spoken English before. And so teachers are having to consult Google Translate to try to communicate with migrants in their classroom. So this puts a strain on resources and is a challenge for these towns. And that's where ultimately people want to focus on all of this. Now, as far as the legal status of these migrants, a number of them are most of them reportedly are in this country legally. They're the recipients of what's called temporary protected status. We've told you on this podcast, we've done interviews about the situation in Haiti, civil unrest, massive political issues, the assassination of the previous leader. Gangs have overrun the largest city there of Port-au-Prince. And so ultimately, the Biden administration has granted temporary legal status to 300,000 Haitians in the U.S. because the conditions in Haiti are so bad, it is unsafe for them to return, and they might, in fact, die if they return to Haiti. Haiti is under a complete state of emergency. So ultimately, many of these folks are actually here legally because of the instability in their country, but they're just not being given the resources in places like Springfield to be able to ensure that they have a shelter and they can function and work.
Moshe, it's an issue that we've seen, as you said, across the country, including here in New York City, where the mayor has said the city simply can't afford the influx of migrants, because remember, the city is in charge of housing, feeding, educating, providing medical care, and they're asking, like all of these cities, for federal resources.
Yeah. So for all the fun you see out there, we shared on the Instagram yesterday, people making TikTok dances to a remix of Trump saying they're eating cats and dogs. And so some people are having fun with it. I was on the subway in New York Thursday, and I heard it come up twice in random conversations. I was just kind of listening in to conversations around me. They're like, hey, did you see this cats and dogs thing? Did you watch the debate? It's all anyone wants to talk about. And I think that what we're trying to get at here is there hopefully leads to a conversation about the bigger issue here, as opposed to this focus, this micro focus on, did anyone hurt a pet?
I can tell you, having watched the debate with a room full of college students at Hofstra University, the room erupted in laughter. Like, people couldn't even deal with it. It just was
because Trump has this kind of stand-up style to him, right? Like, that's why people like to attend his rallies, because he's sort of telling jokes. And so people are like, he said what? And it's the way he says it that I think got people's attention, when ultimately there is a bigger issue here to discuss. But we're talking about cats and dogs, and we likely will for a bit. And it might be kind of one of the more memorable parts of this campaign, if I'm going to make this prediction now.
And it has been a memorable campaign.
It's been memorable. Biden dropped out. There was an assassination attempt. But can we talk about the migrants eating cats and dogs? Remember that.
Well, sticking with politics, the debate about the debates appears to be over, at least for now. Former President Trump saying Thursday that he will not participate in a second debate against Vice President Harris. Moshe, one thing that I do want to mention, we are actually very ahead of schedule for debates in general in a normal election season, which we have noted this is not,
this is not normal.
Anything but. The first debate typically happens in late September. That said, this year is not like others. Trump debated Joe Biden in June, which pretty much was the beginning of the end of Biden's presidential run. So Trump's debate with Harris was his second debate. And now he writes on social media in all caps, quote, Kamala should focus on what she should have done during the last almost 4 years period. There will be no third debate.
So he declares it on this September 12th. We'll see if that stands. The Harris campaign says they want another debate. They tweeted out, America deserves another debate. We should note who is offering another debate, actually 2 more debates, Mr. Donald Trump. Before this debate, he said, hey, Kamala Harris, we're going to do a Fox debate, we're doing an ABC debate, we're going to do an NBC debate. Kamala Harris at the time said, nope, we're just doing the ABC debate. Now that the debate has gone well from her perspective, she wants more debates. And now you got Trump saying, nope, no more debates. I won, you lost. That's why you want debates. Now that's his unique perspective on this. But you also have a lot of Trump allies conceding privately, yeah, that debate was not good for him. He should not do another debate. So you're going to see the spin. Then there's the reality behind the scenes. Remember, Trump didn't engage in primary debates earlier this year because, Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley were below him. Then he agreed to that early debate with Biden. It went so well for him, he knocked Biden out. Then he had the Harris debate. It didn't go well for him. Polling showing right now a 2-point-ish bounce for Kamala Harris in some of these early polls. That, historically speaking, is pretty normal. Something we discussed in the newsletter yesterday and over on Instagram. She'll see that bounce. Will be enough to win? Unclear. Historically speaking, winning the first debate, you have a 50-50 shot of still being president. Doesn't change that much. John Kerry won his first debate. He was never president. Hillary Clinton won her debates against Trump. She wasn't president. Mitt Romney beat Barack Obama in the first debate in 2012. Mitt Romney didn't become president. So ultimately, you did have Biden beat Trump in the debates in 2020 and then go on to win, obviously, but mixed record of success there. But what has been successful so far for Kamala Harris, that debate performance inspired more people to donate $47 million in the first 24 hours following her debate. 600,000 people donating to Harris there. So she continues her money advantage here. But that's something we've discussed in the past before. Having more money doesn't necessarily lead to success. You know who had more money in 2016? Hillary Clinton. She didn't win. Now, Joe Biden did have more money in 2020 and went on to win. So ultimately here, when people like to ask us, hey, does this matter? Hey, does this matter? It all matters to a certain extent. Is it a predictor of success? not necessarily, especially given how close things are. It'll all come down to the vote in Springfield, Ohio, Jill. We mentioned yesterday, the only debate we know is definitely happening is the VP debate. That'll be October 1st, New York City. CBS is anchoring that, and that'll be between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance.
Okay, time for the speed read from the Associated Press. A state judge struck down North Dakota's ban on abortion Thursday, saying that the state constitution creates a fundamental right to access abortion before a fetus is viable. In his ruling, the state district judge, Bruce Romanek, also said that the law violates the state constitution because it's too vague. Under the judge's order, abortion would be legal in North Dakota, but the state currently has no clinics performing them. The Republican-dominated state government is expected to appeal this ruling. The judge was ruling on a request from the state to dismiss a 2022 lawsuit that was filed against the ban by what at the time was the sole abortion clinic in North Dakota. The clinic has since moved across the border to Minnesota, and the state argued that a trial wouldn't make a difference. The judge has actually canceled the trial set for August, saying how North Dakota's constitution guarantees, quote, inalienable rights, including life and liberty. He says the abortion statutes at issue in this case infringes on a woman's fundamental right to procreative autonomy and are not narrowly tailored to promote women's health or to protect unborn human life. He says the law as currently drafted takes away a woman's liberty and her right to pursue and obtain safety and happiness.
So this is a bittersweet victory for abortion rights advocates in North Dakota, given that there are no clinics left, and it's unlikely that any will open anytime soon. The state is appealing this ruling. As you mentioned, the sole abortion provider moved from Fargo to neighboring Moorhead, Minnesota. And so now we'll see how the appeal goes here. As the pro-choice side has said here, even though it's legal, there is no way to get one right now in North Dakota. The judge acknowledged in his ruling that in the past, North Dakota courts had previously relied on federal court precedents on abortion, but said those state precedents have upended the Supreme Court ruling in 2022 and allows states to make their own decisions here. So it is interesting, Jill, because we've seen in a number of these red states that have passed near complete abortion bans, is when things go to referendum, the pro-abortion rights side has won every single time. Ohio, Kansas, Kentucky, and several other places. And now you have a judge ruling in a very red state in that direction as well.
From the Wall Street Journal, history in space. Private citizen astronauts traveling with SpaceX completed the first commercial spacewalk, pushing new boundaries for Elon Musk's company. SpaceX kicked off the spacewalk, which was a centerpiece of the privately funded Polaris Dawn spaceflight on Thursday morning, when oxygen began flowing inside the astronauts' SpaceX-developed suits. After checking for leaks and boosting the pressure of the suits, a company live stream showed Jared Isaacman, who is a tech industry billionaire, leaving the SpaceX Crew Dragon vehicle through its hatch and conducting a series of mobility tests for about an hour. Afterwards, Sarah Gillis, a SpaceX employee who is also a member of the crew, left the spacecraft after Isaacman returned and did her own set of tests.
So the mission here is part of the larger mission of returning humans to the moon, eventually establishing a human presence on Mars. They don their special SpaceX designed and manufactured suits that had been untested in orbit, SpaceX saying that building a base on the moon and a city on Mars will require thousands of spacesuits, so they want to make sure they get this right.
From the New York Times, the commissioner of the New York Police Department resigned Thursday, 1 week after it emerged that his phone was seized as part of a federal investigation that touched several members of the mayor's inner circle. Edward Caban had been in charge of the nation's largest police department for about 15 months. He said in an email to staff that he made the decision to resign after the news around recent developments had created a distraction for our department. The commissioner had been under pressure to resign from Mayor Eric Adams' administration. City Hall has been hit by 4 federal investigations, which have resulted in searches and phone seizures targeting high-ranking city officials, including the commissioner. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York is overseeing the investigation, as well as 2 other inquiries focusing on officials in the Adams administration.
Yeah, left and right here, you've seen raids, phone seizures. Mayor Adams himself who's a first-term Democrat running for re-election. He was subpoenaed in July, 8 months after agents seized his cell phone and an iPad while he was leaving an event in New York City. Now, the mayor still hasn't been publicly accused of any crime here. Neither has now the former NYPD commissioner. He hasn't been charged or accused of any wrongdoing. Apparently, the former police commissioner, the guy who has resigned now, his twin brother is a former NYPD officer. He's being investigated for potential impropriety here, but there's just a big mess here in the mayor's inner circle. 2 deputy mayors, the school's chancellor, one of Adams' top advisors. New York City is a mess, multiple raids, multiple federal investigations here. Still unclear who's accused of what in what investigation. Certainly something to watch in a city as large as New York. By the way, the NYPD, they've already named an interim police commissioner. His name is Tom Donlin. He formerly served as the chief of the FBI National Threat Center and once led the Office of Homeland Security here in New York.
From the Tennessean rock star John Bon Jovi and his team talked a woman down from a ledge on the Siegenthaler Pedestrian Bridge in downtown Nashville on Tuesday. The Metro Nashville Police Department saying in a social media post that Bon Jovi was filming a music video for his song The People's House on the bridge. The bridge was open to the public during the shoot. In a video posted by the police department, a woman wearing a blue shirt is seen over the ledge of the bridge with her arms wrapped around its railing. The video shows Bon Jovi and a production assistant walking along the bridge, which spans the Cumberland River between downtown Nashville and Nissan Stadium. So they greeted the woman on the ledge, the musician leaning against the rail. The production assistant starts talking to the woman before Bon Jovi joins in. And then the woman turns toward Bon Jovi and the production assistant, and they help her over the railing.
Once safe, the woman and Bon Jovi face each other, and the singer hugs her before the group walks away out of respect for the private citizen who experienced a moment of crisis. Bon Jovi has declined to speak to the media about this further. He and his wife are founders of a foundation which routinely helps people in times of crisis, from hunger to homelessness. So Bon Jovi has had training in speaking to individuals during difficult situations here. Incidentally, this bridge, you mentioned, Jill, the Siegenthaler Bridge, he's named for a legendary editor of the newspaper there, the Tennessean, John Siegenthaler, who incidentally himself prevented someone from jumping off the bridge back in the 1950s. So it's nice for once, Jill, to be able to bring people some good news here in this speed read.
And finally, from the New York Post, don't know something? Well, don't Google it. TikTok it. Kids these days are apparently abandoning the trusty search engine in favor of social media and other unorthodox means of online research. Pulling data from an April 2024 survey of about 2,000 Americans, a report finds that 45% of Gen Z users have a higher likelihood of using social media search functions instead of Google, whereas 35% of millennials, 20% of Gen X, and less than 10% of boomers did the same.
So that's the deal. I love when we're saying kids. We're talking about people in their 20s, Jill. Younger audiences are searching, not Googling, and they're using TikTok to answer their questions. And that is why retailers, marketers are all realizing that and figuring out ways to try to get their products and content to the top of TikTok search. Also, what they like about it, less reading, more video. You get to watch an explanation of something you're trying to figure out, as opposed to having to click on links and read through stories. Google has talked about this in the past, that younger people looking for a lunch spot, perhaps, they're doing it on social media, not doing it on Google Maps anymore. And so they're also looking for creators, people they can trust, as opposed to official sources. One thing they're looking for is authenticity. They're looking for someone to tell about the experience they had at a restaurant in a video that's 60 seconds or less, as opposed to, I don't know, reading a bunch of reviews, some of which might be bots.
All right, Gen Z, I have a little secret. I am friends with some quote unquote influencers, like the people who make these videos. Mm-hmm. And I have literally seen them take bites of food and spit it out and kind of say that they're eating at certain restaurants. And they have friends who do the same thing, who are also influencers.
Yes.
So
why would they do such a thing, Jill? Why would these influencers do such a thing? To
appear authentic and try to present that they're eating certain foods or doing certain things or living a certain way. So as authentic as social media is it? I mean,
but are they lying in their reviews? Are they telling me something that is good that they didn't like?
I think in some cases they are pretending to be doing things that they're not doing.
Got it.
It's as simple as that. My whole point is just as authentic as you think social media is, it's not that authentic.
Yeah. And sometimes they want access from the restaurateur, or they might have gotten paid or comped, or there's a deal there behind the scenes. So be as critical as you are of the TikTok results as you are of any other results. Is that the lesson, Jill?
Except Moshe's Instagram, which is just
like,
the facts, as real as mine, by the way. Yeah, mine is like what you see is what you get.
We're not, and by the way, if we're being sponsored by somebody, we tell you. Like, I literally put up an ad break. I'm like, ad break. I'm promoting a product here. We try to be very transparent.
All right, Moshe, it is Friday. Cheers to the freaking weekend. Time for what we are watching, reading, and eating in a section that is not sponsored by anybody. This is actually what
we'd love it to be sponsored by somebody. We're still looking for a sponsor here. Jill, what are you watching this weekend?
Moshe, HBO has just released a new 2-part documentary about The Sopranos. It is called Wise Guy, David Chase and The Sopranos. It looks into the life of the creator of this show and covers the creation and production of the series, looking at many of its coolest moments. So I'm looking forward to that. What about you?
Jill, The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives has premiered on Hulu. I keep seeing content on the socials about it, and I'm going to have to take a look. Apparently, this is based on #MomTalk, a group of Mormon mom influencers who became popular thanks to viral videos on TikTok. However, things imploded as some of the couples started what they call soft swinging with each other. We'll leave it at that. Anyway, this looks at the lives of the secret lives of Mormon wives. Not so secret now that they're doing a whole Hulu series about it, but looked interesting and looking for something a bit mindless after a tough week.
Speaking of mindless, I also want to mention, because of your recommendation last week, I started to watch The Perfect Couple on Netflix. Yes,
on Netflix, Nicole Kidman.
I am loving it. I have one episode left, so great recommendation.
Well, there you go. We are coming back with recommendations for previous weeks after having watched them and giving you a little bit of feedback. Jill, what are you reading?
I am bucking my trend of just going with a podcast for this section. I'm actually reading again.
Yes, again. But we're going to start soft. We're not starting with the book. We're going back to magazine. We're going to do a magazine.
We are back to the old faithful, The Atlantic. This article called "Social Media Companies' Worst Argument," written in part by a friend of the pod, Jonathan Haidt. I actually learned about it from his Instagram page. Basically, they're talking about why tech leaders are so adamant about pushing their creations on other people's kids while protecting their own. This one part really stayed with me, Moshe. They talk about how Steve Jobs limited his children's use of technology. TikTok CEO does not let his children go on TikTok. Bill Gates restricted his kids' screen time and didn't give them a phone until they were 14. Google's CEO didn't give his 11-year-old a phone. Mark Zuckerberg carefully monitors his kids' screen times and avoids sharing identifying photos of them on Instagram. Snap CEO Evan Spiegel, he limits his 7-year-old's tech use to just 90 minutes a week.
I sense a trend here, Jill.
So yeah, I mean, I think that really hits home for parents, right? If these tech CEOs who have all of the data are being so strict and really limiting social media for their kids, maybe it should be a warning for the rest of us. Moshe, what are you reading?
So we're unpacking here after moving in to our new place, and just opened a couple boxes of books I have. And the top of one of the boxes was Daring Greatly by Brene Brown, which I began several years ago, but never finished. So I'm returning to that. I love Brene Brown. Actually, very early on in our relationship, Alex and I watched her Netflix special a few years back, which I highly recommend. And so looking forward to reading the inspiring words of Brene Brown. All right, Jill, what are you eating?
Moshe, I am eating pancakes. I've been doing this recipe. Actually, I got from Alex, your wife's recommendation, Birch Bender's high protein pancakes. They're so easy. You just literally mix them in with water. Mm-hmm. But because I guess I'm maybe a sucker, I also bought the funfetti flavor. So I do 2/3 protein, 1/3 funfetti, and I make those pancakes for my kids. And they love them, and they think that they're all funfetti. So Alex, I hope you're not listening to this. My Alex, I hope you're not listening to this. Moshe, what are you eating?
Good Culture cottage cheese. Also not a sponsor of this podcast, but we're a fan. They got flavored cottage cheese, and they have these like little on-the-go packets, and that's been a breakfast of mine for a couple mornings.
I love Good Culture cottage cheese, and my husband actually went out, and they're sold out basically in every supermarket within a 10-mile radius from where I live.
I bought them out.
All right, guys, it has been a week. Thank you for listening to the Mo News podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this with your friends. It will help us grow. Follow us and subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and review us in the App Store.
Yeah, Jill, we need to work on our TikTok algorithm so when the people search for good podcasts, when the kids search for a good podcast, we come up on the talk. And not just the Googles.
I didn't even know we were just calling it the talk.
I just made that up. It's probably not called the talk, but I'm going with it. Anyway, everyone, have a good rest of your Friday the 13th. We'll see you on Monday.
All right, bye, everyone.